yourself.
Okay. My name is GBADEBO Vivour. I'm an architect by profession. I'm a politician by passion. I like to say that. I'm 39 years old. I graduated from MIT for architecture, and when I decided to go into politics, I went to University of Lagos and got a master's in research and public policy. I worked with the American government, the Chinese government, and urban planning projects. I worked in England for quite some time in architecture. And then I came back to Nigeria, worked in some architecture firms as well. My journey to politics was born out of activism. For about 3 years, I was in a struggle with the federal government against the introduction of genetic modified foods into the country, mainly because the country will lose food sovereignty, health consequences without any oversight or regulation, and also the fact that you cannot replant those seeds, right? And you pretty much give out your food sovereignty to international multinationals, right? So I led a 2,000 man march on the Senate in 2016, and unfortunately, the senators that came out to address us, I felt lacked empathy, and they did not address any of our issues. All they just reminded me about was that they were two-time governors, and that's the basis on which I should listen to them, and they were not really saying anything much. So I came back to Lagos, and I said, to hell with these people, I'm going into politics. And I joined the Kowa Party and ran for local government chairman. So that's the start of my journey. Then I was in the PDP, contested for Senate, Lagos West. That's the largest central district in Nigeria by population. Ikeja all the way to Badagry. I had the most opposition votes in Lagos State in that election. After Atiku in the PDP, it was myself, and then the governorship candidate, and then the senatorial candidate of Lagos East. I'm passionate about youth involvement in politics. I feel that my role for the longest time has been to demystify the space. Because I was raised at a time where everybody said it was only dirty people that go into politics. My pastor used to say, so for me, I feel that what I've done in the past since 2016 was to demystify the process, to open it up, to encourage people to get involved and to lead by example. I'm a Lagosian, and what else? Yeah, I think that's an intro.
Usually, I pride myself at giving very good introductions, but I don't think I did you justice. Guys on YouTube and Facebook, if you're just logging in, we have the Labour Party gubernatorial candidate, GBADEBO Rhodes Vivour. How do you pronounce that?
Vivour.
Vivour. Okay, GBADEBO Rhodes Vivour. Before I say anything, is MIT not the best school in the world?
Well, when I was there, it was. I think it still is.
Like you went to the best school in the whole world. Ha!
Yeah.
We have leaders that did not go to any school. So if we have leaders that not only went to school, went to the best school, please, sorry, because these days it's very hard. So people say I can wake up now and say I went to Harvard. If imagine we're at a pub, that's what they call them in the UK, or a beer parlor for the local man in Nigeria, and you said you went to MIT. Me too. I don't want to sound like I went to UI. I'll just say, me too. Yes, I was in Harvard. I hope you have classmates that can identify you, because so many of our leaders went to so many schools that nobody could identify them. So you are identified.
Also, my program was not one of those 1 week, 2 week programs.
Oh, you not go for 1 week, 2 week program. You went for full BSc.
My program was 3.5 years.
That's a whole BSc.
Yeah, not all those 2 week things that they do.
I don't want to hype this gentleman, but you see, not only did he go to study in the best university in the world, he studied building, construction, architecture, which is in a modern city can never be overemphasized. You go to Singapore, Tokyo, Hong Kong, London, New York. These places are renowned for their architecture. So it would be a great idea. I'm neutral. Anybody comes to my platform, I appreciate them. So I'm neutral. But I kind of like a young man who's not yet 40, who studied in a university, not just any university, the best university in the world, who studied a relevant course to Nigeria. You see, sometimes you can go there and study religious studies. Not like it's not useful, but is it relevant to
Yes.
Nigeria's current predicament? So he also studied architecture. He has his master's in political science from Unilag.
Yeah.
He also um, has been an activist fighting against genetic modified foods. Now, um, let's talk about your fight. Before we go to, I'm just going to ask you questions all over the place. Let's talk about genetically modified foods. Um, why are you so passionate about fighting that cause?
Okay, so generally, I feel that most problems that we have in Nigeria can be corrected by having good leadership. So generally, regardless of how we're going, most of our problems can be corrected with the right leadership. Now, the introduction of genetic modified foods cannot necessarily be corrected because those specimens colonize your natural varieties, and then those varieties now become genetically modified and carry on those properties of the genetically modified foods. Also, you lose your trade partners. Like the entire European Union has bans and regulations against genetic modified foods. So on all fronts, it was really policy that was not in the interest of the common man. And food connects everybody: the driver, the literate, the illiterates, the president, the governor. And that's why you find that abroad, and even in America, where they're the major proponents of genetic modified foods, they have labeling. Now, you can imagine Nigeria does not have the regulations or the oversight to even ensure that labeling from farms in rural areas are done properly. So even if you wanted to focus on eating organic foods, that would not necessarily be feasible. So for the fact that 80% of our employment in Nigeria really is the rural sector and it's agriculture, right? This is something that's going to affect everybody. And so something that I felt will not be corrected by good leadership. Even if you want to correct it and go against those policies, this is a 20, 30 year span. And that's only if you've monitored and you're testing the level of contamination genetically across your country, which we are not doing.
Quite a lot to worry about. So let me try to get you right from the little agriculture I know. So the genetically modified plants will be cross-pollinated with our local plants,
Exactly.
and then carry on all the traits, and we'll start to see Oyinbo kind diseases here too.
Pretty much, yes.
Oh wow.
Because the link to cancer is linked to endocrine dysfunction, is linked to reproductive failure, is linked to so much, you know. And then also there's the agro processing of it. So the chemicals that are linked to it, the level of pollution that it creates, how it contaminates the water bodies as well. It truly is a disaster, especially in a country that does not have proper regulations and proper monitoring and oversight. And it's something that very few, it's not a popular, trendy topic. So it's also very difficult to get people to get behind you, you know. And but I did this for 3 years. So it's not, but it's something that will affect everybody. You know, food affects everybody. So I felt it was a very important thing to do.
Okay, let's talk about education. You seem to have scored very high in that regard. How do you rate the education in Lagos State currently and Nigeria as a whole?
Education in Nigeria is extremely poor. I would say it's quite mediocre. Education is supposed to prepare you to be a critical thinker, and you'll find that that's not the case. You have young kids that are still being told that Mongo Park discovered River Niger this year. River Niger that their ancestors were bathing in when the Europeans were probably in caves, right? So the syllabus, we're still going off the British syllabus that was created in a way to produce workers, but not necessarily critical thinkers or innovators, right? So the whole system, first of all, needs to be overhauled. We need a system that's producing producers, people that are critical thinkers. Now, obviously, there are always exceptions. I'm not saying that there are no brilliant people in the Nigerian education system. I'm looking at the system in itself for what it is. Also, when you look at the welfare packages for teachers, the standard ratio by UNESCO is 1 to 20 in the classroom. In some places, you have 1 to 60, some places, you have 1 to 100 in Lagos State. There's a level of innovation the government has tried to bring into the education sector. Out of the 1,009 schools, they've probably brought in a program Equexcel to 300 of that. So that's like 30%. But a lot of this is still very tokenist in that approach. It never really scales up, it never expands, it's never consistent. That's another problem as well. And you still have many children that are walking long distances to get to school, like in the Ojo local government, in the rural communities of Lagos State. And you still have a lot of children that are sitting on the floor, right? They have teachers that are not properly trained, teachers that are not, they are not excited about their job. So a lot has to be done in the education sector. Currently, per capita spend of Lagos State on education is about 8,000 naira, and that needs to be increased, at least doubled. And a lot of investment must be done in teacher training and ensuring that the whole syllabus system, especially in the public school, is more consistent and it's improved significantly. And then we also need a situation where we are looking at continuous learning, not just for the young, for the older people, right? So they can keep up, they can have employability skills and actually really make education something that is happening inside the school and also outside school, right? So outside school programs and things like that. The main idea is, because I went to ISL till GSS 3. Or SS1, I think. Yeah, SS1. Then I finished my A-levels in Paris. And the thinking from the idea of having practical knowledge, when you're not cramming and drawing computers, right? You have a lot of people that are drawing the process of a chemical reaction, but they never do that chemical reaction. You have people that are memorizing the image of the heart in biology, but they never actually play with a model of the heart. So that's why you find that when a lot of students that study in Nigeria go abroad, they excel, because all of a sudden they don't have to cram anymore. They are seeing things that they can hold practically and they have deeper knowledge of it. And that's what we need to have in Nigeria. We need to have very practical knowledge that allows you to be able to earn a living, and it's also peculiar to the peculiarities of your local government. So, for instance, policy for me in a place like Badagry in Kodobi, part of your education is to understand aquaculture, right? Because that industry should be expanded in that particular local government, So, for me, education must be very practical, must be something where we move from the cramming side of it, because that seems to be a huge focus in Nigerian education, and make it more practical. And also, the economy that we have today now with in-demand jobs, where you don't need to go to school, you spend 6 months learning a skill, you can be earning $1,000 to $2,000 every month, even when you're working in Nigeria. So we need to improve employability skills and open up our young people to the world. Because these jobs are in demand, and it's not based on local peculiarities of Nigeria. You can be in Lagos working for a tech company in California because you can code Python and they need so many people to code. So these are all peculiarities that we need to get in. And also, getting back to, it's not informal, but giving people the skills to produce things, right? So because the dropout rate once you enter high school is significant. A lot of these people drop out of school and they're not going back to school again. So what skills do they have to be able to earn a living so they don't become the next Agbero on the corner, right? I say to people that imagine when you walk on Bond Street or anywhere in London and you're seeing these furniture, most of them are made in Indonesia, right? Are we saying that we don't have craftsmen that can be producing furniture that we're exporting to London, right? And have a whole industry of it, right? So there are a lot of practical things we can open up our economy and education to. And I'm very passionate about education.
I understand where you're coming from, and Nigeria's education as a whole needs an overhaul.
Yeah.
We're going into a dispensation where you could study something in the university or in the polytechnics and end up doing something totally different.
Yeah.
Abroad, they found a way of not wasting your time to study law if you want to be a dancer or something. You know,
Yes.
why waste $50,000 when it's not like you want to be in the legal team of a dancing company? You understand?
Yeah.
We need to fine tune our education to suit us. That's my understanding of it. Our education was never tailored to suit us. It
No, it
was
wasn't.
tailored, it was fashioned after a society that we're not in any resemblance with. So
Yeah.
we need to have that. And what are your thoughts in that particular regard? Is there.
Yeah. So, yeah. Right.
Go, no, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, so I agree with you 100%. I feel that one of the first things we need to look at is history. And people might, turn their nose up at it, but understanding your history as a people gives you the sense of pride that allows you to be able to look for solutions within yourself. If your mind is programmed that everything that came before the white man
Yes.
is evil, you will never in yourself know that you can solve problems of yourself, right? And our history is great. It's amazing. It has linkages that goes all the way to ancient Egypt. And there's so much story. And the good thing with history, when you look at the way the Americans um, groomed their citizens, and the British and the French, they literally celebrate the qualities they want in their citizens by teaching them history of those people or actors in that time. So they're saying this is what it means to be heroic. This is what it means to be great. And it's I'll use the word brainwashing, because when you see the Americans that take, you don't see where they get that sense of exceptionalism from, that sense of pride. It's all in their history. And they pick and choose what they're going to put in there. So they'll say slavery was mass migration of workers, right? They find their way. And as a country, as a people, as a society, we also must take history. So when you're talking about peculiarities and molding education to fit who we are, history is one of it. Also, teaching with things that are accessible and are normal to the regular people. So A for apple does not make sense because most people don't know what an apple looks like. A for agbalumo makes more sense, right? And thinking like that. Also, another thing is the advantage of a child, which is a disadvantage as well. Like there was a lady, her name will come to me, where she talked about how children that learn Yoruba from an early age at home, they lose progress because when they get to school, it's almost as though they have to start learning all over again. And then the kids that are spoken to in English from the beginning, they seem to make progress, and then those kids later on catch up. And then she did an experiment where those kids continued learning Yoruba for some time and then did exams and were excellent. So also taking all these factors into consideration. And then, like I said, tailoring our education as well to our culture, right? And to our peculiarities, all with an aim to create a very well-rounded, well-informed, a person full of pride, African pride, and a person with the ability to produce. At MIT, the motto was mind and hand. So no matter how brilliant you think something is, no matter how brilliant your idea is, you must make it with your hand. Right? You must men's and manners. You must make it with your hand. And they'll give you everything you need. We had laser cutters, we had CNC routers, we had 3D printers. And this was like 10 years before it was available to the public. But the main idea is that produce, you must make. And I think we need to bring that into our education system as well.
All right, awesome. Talking about history, one of the things that history tells me, I don't know if you agree with me, is our beliefs, our ideologies, our cultures, our traditions were not allowed to evolve. They were regarded barbaric. Oh, yeah, every culture, you see, the Americans and the British, they're all nice, clean, and posh now. But let's remember there was a time when if you offended the King of England, your head would be on a spike at the
Yeah, of
gates
course.
of the palace. You
Yeah.
understand? Every society evolved. I remember reading the biblical story of David and Goliath when David severed the head of Goliath. He held it in his hand like this and
Yeah.
marched through the city holding, and they were hailing him. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and today Israel is not like that.
Yes.
You understand? So our beliefs, we were considered backwards, and we were considered inferior, and we were taught that our ideologies were inferior. I'll give you a very practical example. My dad studied medicine in Romania. He had to learn
Okay.
Romanian to study
Wow.
medicine. So he spent 1 year studying the Romanian language, and he did all his exams, took all his notes in Romanian. And when he came back to Nigeria, he now had to start converting what he read and studied in Romanian into English.
Wow.
So we also need to put our what you might call it, our history, our traditions, we need to put them in a place of honor
Yes.
and help by making the people admire, have aspiration for what we stand for. I know this is off point, but is there anything your government is planning to do about that before we move to other
Yes.
cogent
Yes.
issues?
Yes. I agree with you 100%. You know, they say until the lions start telling their story, history always glorified the hunter. And
Mm,
when you understand the history, when the Europeans discovered the Benin bronzes, the Ife heads, and the amount of crisis it brought to their entire society because they could not understand how these things were done and were of the similar sophistication as the Roman sculptures, right? And
mhm.
they tried to make it seem like some white people from one far place came and did those sculptures. I don't know if you're familiar with Leo Fabrinus or any of
Yes,
that,
yes,
but
yes.
the point is we have our own level of excellence. Our culture is excellent. There's so many stories. When the Portuguese discovered the Benin city, they compared it to Portugal. It was clean. It was well planned, right? But until we tell these stories, until we let our people know their story, we will always see our past as mediocre. And you know, if you don't know where you're coming from, you can't really go to where you are supposed to go.
Mm,
So for me. I tell people that part of Lagos, my vision for Lagos is create somewhere that is a magnet for tourism. Tourism not just to come to the beach, tourism to look at art, to really display culture and history because there's so much resources that can be gained from that. You have people in Brazil that are going to come, people from Cuba that are going to come. In fact, you'll find that the Yoruba culture is more enshrined and celebrated in places like Cuba and Brazil than even in southwest of Nigeria. And these people want to come, right? So we need to create that avenue for them to be able to come. And that's about telling our stories, showcasing our culture, the history of it, the art of it. I mean, look at how successful artX has become, right? And there's so much more that it can become. So that will be part of a policy for my government to be able to do that as a major magnet for tourism.
absolutely. I love the fact that you share that because if you read Acts chapter 8, there was an Ethiopian eunuch who was reading the book of Isaiah aloud.
Yeah.
He was returning from pilgrimage, going back to Ethiopia, where the queen, the Kandake, was the queen. Um, and as of when Acts chapter 8 was written, England was home to some barbarians who were eating each other alive and eating
Exactly.
live animals.
Exactly.
You know, and all of a sudden they
Exactly.
brought Christianity to us. I'm like, oh wow. You know,
Yeah.
they white. I don't want us to go into this too deeply, but they whitewashed everything. Yeah, I'll ask you,
Yeah.
who discovered America? You hear it's Christopher Columbus. What happened to the Red Indians? They were living there all the. Who discovered
Exactly.
China? They'll say it's Marco Polo. Meanwhile, Marco Polo was
Yeah.
slave to the Khan in China because he was
Yeah.
captured and enslaved, but he still managed
Yeah.
inside the slavery to discover the China that enslaved him.
Yeah.
You know, and we need to
And
read.
it's just like how most Nigerians believe Mongo Park discovered River Niger, right?
Yeah, I
It's
find that
just
very fascinating. As the Mungo Park comes around and says, "Hi guys, this is River Niger," and they go like, "Oh my God, is a river there? We never knew." Ah, Mungo Park, thank you. All right, let's talk about safety in Lagos. I was driving home for this interview, and my heart was in my throat. Any small movement around my car, I start to panic. I'll be telling my wife, hide your phone, don't let people see you, you know. And I'm just coming from the UK. I was in the UK for 12 days. Nobody hides phone. You sit in the car. Fine. Now I know there's this craze for luxury watch
Yeah.
in the UK where they will literally steal your watch. It happens a lot in Mayfair and those environs. They see you with a Rolex or an Audemars, they will rip it off your wrist, and sometimes they will even chook you knife to take it. But aside that, you even my son, for instance, let me tell you this funny story. My son could sleep in a separate room in the hotel we stayed, but he can't sleep on his own bed in Nigeria. He wants to sleep on his sister's bed with his sister. The fear is in, and I couldn't understand. I thought it was going to be a problem, so I had planned that if we shout on him to go and sleep in his, because we had a suite with two beds. So I was like, okay, me and my
Yeah.
wife will sleep in one room. If it's too hard, he will come and join us in the bed. He slept alone, and I'm like, aren't you afraid? So there's this fear, this spirit of fear that goes around Nigeria. We have high fences with barbed wire.
Exactly.
I have police patrolling the estate. What can be done to make Lagos safer? And this, when you see those days when I say Lagos is not safe, what comes to your mind is Ikorodu. Lagos is not safe. Hey, Mushin. Lagos is not safe. Hey, Meron, Agbado, Mangoro.
Yeah.
But there was a popular story I was reading about a young man who had a bloodied nose. It's on all the blogs today. I don't know if you saw it. He was
Yeah.
captured at the Lekki end of the Lekki Ikoyi bridge, kidnapped, taken to somewhere in Surulere. He said he was fortified with with African jazz, and he was able to escape, but some were not so lucky. So it's no longer what we read about in the newspaper, what we hear about. It is gradually crawling to our doorsteps. I remember NSAS. Before NSAS, I used to say, nothing can ever happen on the island. Island is safe. After NSAS, a lot more people started to jackpot. Even people who have no reason to jackpot, beginning to fear that Nigeria is taking a funny turn. So let's talk about the issue of security. You, as a Lagos State governor, cannot address Nigeria's national security crisis. And permit me to say,
Yeah.
forgive me if I say it is a crisis.
Yeah.
They are still releasing the people that were kidnapped on the train 6 months or 4 months ago.
Yeah.
Now kidnappers are returning old notes. They want new notes. It's a crisis. How do you intend as governor to fix the Lagos State security? Let me downgrade it from crisis to a security issue.
Okay. So it's a multi-pronged approach, and it's one that will be done in the system. One, Lagos State has a number of communities. So, it breaks down from local government to wards, and then you have communities, like real communities where when you come in there, they know a stranger is there. Now, these people must form part of the pillars of this security architecture. So that's the informal sort of security architecture where you're gathering intelligence, you're gathering data, they're working with the local government. And that's why the local government is so important. It's important that they become autonomous. Unfortunately, the Lagos State Assembly voted against local government autonomy. But we need our local governments to work, so we have visionary leaders at that local government level that can be chief security officers of those local governments. So they then work with the communities and they're gathering information, gathering data. That's the informal data gathering mechanism. Because you'll find that in most communities, if you go past, for instance, in Badia, your phone gets missing, there are people you can go and talk to that will know where your phone is. And you talk to the right person, you get your phone back. You might have to give them 2,000 or 3,000 naira, but you will get your phone back. So there's a network of information that exists. Right now is to formalize that network. Secondly, the formal sector will be a surveillance ring around the entire state, right? That's tied into incentives. So for instance, registering for health insurance, right? Having access to health insurance as part of my vision for Lagos State. A biometric capturing will be done. And it's not something where you all have to go and stay in an office and queue for a long time. No, in every ward, there will be at least 3 places where you can do that biometric capturing so that whatever movements you make in Lagos to a good degree, people can track the movement on the roads. The idea of this is deterrence. The reason why you can be in Hampstead, you can be in different parts of London, even most parts of London, nobody's building any high fence. The windows don't have burglary proof. It's because if you try anything, the camera will catch you, right? You will not be able to make it far. And this is important for a state like Lagos that has such a small footprint but so many people. There must be a level of intelligence surveillance that happens across the state. Secondly, we must increase the quality of life of our police force. We must help them, we must equip them. We must work with the federal government to ensure that there is a lot more recruitment, especially for Lagos State, and then we must consistently push for state policing, right? Because that will also improve the quality of security in the state. And then that's on one arm. That is in terms of deterrence and enforcement. On the other arm, this agro menace that has, taken over Lagos State. And a lot of people, unfortunately, do not remember a time where agros did not exist. But there was a time where none of these systems existed. And we need to go back to that time. So, first of all, as my government, we will not be trying to cheat the system by suppressing voters or using young people to intimidate voters. No, we're going to do the work and leave you to vote in a free and fair election. So we don't need this system anymore. So we'll be working with them as stakeholders to figure out what level or type of employability skills they want, make it available to them so they can earn an alternative means of living. Now, the more we can lift people out of poverty, the safer Lagos State will become. And the dream that we want for Lagos is you'll be coming home and you are not feeling you need to rush home because you feel unsafe. Because we need to make Lagos State a 24-hour city, right? In my first 4 years, I want to make it a 16-hour city. In 8 years, it must become a 24-hour city. That's when businesses can start to thrive based on the economies of the land that they are sitting on. Because our land prices are extremely overpriced, especially for businesses, the rents that they are paying and all that. So the time that they exist in business where people are rushing home because they don't feel safe, these things need to change. And it's only by securing Lagos that we can actually successfully achieve that.
Let's talk about police, since you mentioned the police force. Let's talk about SARS and NSARS. Two perspectives, the same coin. What are your thoughts on SARS and NSARS?
Well, let's start with SARS. I believe that the indiscriminate stopping of people and, really flouting their rights as citizens is disgusting. I feel that there should be a process for things. Young people's lives and the quality of life and their rights must be respected. And that's what was part of the answers protest. I joined them. I did not go to politicize it or to steal limelight, but I was there. Right? Whether I was bringing water for people or bringing things to encourage people, I was there. And I felt that it was a cause that must be if you need bullies to continue doing what they're doing, it only gets worse. And gets worse and worse. So you must always stand up to a bully. And that's what SARS became at a point. And that's why it spilled over the way it did. And SARS, I feel, was an awakening. In fact, I would say that the seeds of this new awakening of youth getting involved in politics was planted during the NSARS. And I feel it was a very important reflex point in our history. At the same time, it's very unfortunate how it was handled, whether it's the switching of the lights at the toll gates, whether it's who sent the army to come and shoot at innocent protesters. Very unfortunate how that happened. And then also it's very unfortunate how police that had nothing to do with any of that were then killed. People that had businesses that, they had nothing to do with NSAS, they bought goods hoping to sell, destroyed. So many assets of the state were also destroyed. So in the entirety of it, there's so much pain and loss on two sides. I feel that as a government, a lot more empathy should have been put in place. There were things that did not need to be done. I feel that the reason why everything spilled over now to politics, you will find that at a point when this story is really told, you'll find that it was just 2 or 3 people that had to prove something to a northern oligarchy, and they just decided to hell with it. You will find that when the story is eventually told, because it did not have to go down that way. It didn't, it didn't.
Okay. I want to ask about women. Very important. Any government or group of people that does not consider women is not going to be a stronghold in the years to come. Women seem to like you from the comments. I've been reading the comments. I've taken time out. Oh, they look at that. Diary of a Canadian Mom. Oh, he's brilliant. All the women, if you're a woman and you're listening, can you raise your hands? Let me see. All your comments will be sneaking and tight. He's a fine guy, young, intelligent. So let's talk about all these women that are hailing you. What are your plans for them? What are you going to put in place for the women folk in your government?
Okay, it's a very important question. Well, there's a standard thing of ensuring that you have minimum 35% representation in government and in your council. I think that's pedestrian, is basic, but we're going to do that. But there's a bigger thing, because it ties into everything. It ties into education. We have 2 million children out of school. Now, people will think that the simple answer to that is to make school free, but it isn't. There are many women that are divorced, men divorce them, and they're just left on their own. There are no consequences, there's no alimony that's being paid, there's no welfare net that catches this woman, and these women are with the children. So when a woman is distraught and she cannot wake up in the morning to take care of those children and get them to school, even if the school is free, those kids are not going to go to school. So systems and our policy is going to also be focused on divorcees, single mothers, ensuring that there's a policy system that allows them to fit in, right? Also encourage the fight against domestic violence and rape in our society, which is a menace, especially in Lagos State, and to always ensure that businesses create incentives for women to thrive, not just in politics, because that's another conversation entirely, but in business, in just business as well. So in terms of taxation, in terms of incentives, businesses that are owned by women must receive special preference, right? Because because you are not just investing in the women, you're also investing in the children, right? Making sure that credit is available for them and targeting women, particularly generally tends to live societies. This was seen in the Philippines with microloans that were done by the owner of Cimex. Very successful when you target women. They have higher payback rates and really much more successful. So those are the type of policies that we put in place, ensuring that our education policy also targets and looks at the mothers of these children, especially the ones that are divorcees or single mothers, to ensure that they're carried along and those children actually can get into school.
All right, let's talk about transportation. Lagos is a transportation nightmare, and I'm sure you're aware of the transportation nightmare in Lagos, especially if you're coming from the UK. The other day, there were strikes on the buses and I think the trains, so the Uber prices soared. The other day, there was traffic in central London, and I wanted to show my son the trains. I now realize that, this train is actually faster because from our hotel, the Park Plaza, there's a train station right there in Westminster, straight to Oxford Street. The trains are actually cheaper and faster, and they get out right at Oxford Circus. While if you took a cab, if you took a bus, don't even think about it. If you drove, oh my goodness, you probably have to park and still come and take the train. So the public, there's really no advantage to having a car in the UK, at least in London to be specific. The transportation system is immaculate. Lagos, what is the solution to the chaotic transportation model currently operating in Lagos? And do you have any plans for integrated Lagos state transportation?
Yeah. So it's interesting because Alhaji Lateef Jakonde had a vision for a metro line as far back as when he was governor. Unfortunately, President Buhari stopped that. I'm sure if that was continued, we would have a proper metro line right now. There's no way that a society or a state that has 20-something million people can ever have quality of living if we're not moving by mass transit. And mass transit is not just rail, it's also water. Because before we're colonized, we're moving around the islands of Lagos by water. And so let me go through it. First, we must make Lagos state, we must normalize intermodal transportation system. This means that you can come out of your house, park your car in a parking lot, get on a ferry, go to work, get back on the ferry, get back to where you park your car and go home. So this then ties into transparency and accountability in our government. So for instance, the blue line that was originally supposed to be 24.5 to 26 kilometers. I'm sure you've heard of this. The Chinese government reported to stock exchange that the price of that thing was $170 million. Lagos State apparently put in their books that it cost $1.5 billion. Now, they come out to make excuses for all of this, where they had to do some planning, they had to study do some feasibility analysis, they had to get right of way and all of that. But that cannot explain an almost 9 times difference, right? So transparency and accountability matters, right? You look at the Lagos to Ibadan rail, it's about 170 kilometers, so done for about $1.5 billion. Meanwhile, you're talking about 16 kilometers that's done about almost the same price, right? So my plan is to deliver 4 rail lines in 4 years. It will cost about $1.2 to $1.3 billion, right? Which is the current price that the APC government is saying they're doing 24 kilometers of rail. In doing this, we then create a system where people can now live in Ikorodu comfortably and they don't have to wake up at 4 a.m. to get to VI for work. or businesses can actually set up in Ikorodu without feeling the need that they need to be in Lagos Central. That's the first thing. Secondly, the aim is to reduce the number of cars on the road. So when I see governments putting in projects that are competing with the private sector, so for instance, lag rides came in because they saw what Uber and Bolt were doing, it makes no sense to me. Government should be using innovation to normalize car sharing, ride sharing. We must reduce the number of cars on the road. Thirdly, we must open up the BRT corridors to other private sector players. It cannot just be one company that is dominating it or has a monopoly of it. If you have the capacity to buy a bus that can take 30, 40 people that meet certain conditions, your buses should be allowed to go on BRT lines and must be open and transparent. Thirdly, fourthly, the roads that we do must meet a benchmark, and contractors must be held liable if it does not meet life expectancy. Right? So people are doing roads and they're being washed away every rainy season. And it's another scam. So they come back in another year and now 2 years and do the same road all over again, causing a lot of inconvenience to the people of Lagos State. This must be a thing of the past. We must make sure that roads are being done at a benchmark price. We can use the World Bank standard for how much a road should be done per kilometer. And it must have a certain life expectancy. Right? And even the funding or the final payment for that contractor should be tied to that life expectancy of that road. And then we must now dredge our waters. Unfortunately, like I've highlighted already, Lagos State is operating inefficiently by like ×4. So, for instance, they are doing a bridge that costs 100 naira for 400 naira, right? So we must get to the point where we are actually maximizing our resources, so we are getting the most infrastructure out of it, and dredging our waterways, providing proper embankments, so in that way we're tackling flooding, we're ensuring that large ferries can actually move and connect Lagos East, which is Ikorodu, Epe, to Lagos Central, connect Badagry, Ojo, and Modofin properly to Lagos Central as well, so people can move across the state, and then use a number of short bridges to connect different parts of Lagos. So, for instance, we want to be connecting Alimosho to Amodofin, connecting Alimosho to Ojo, with as many short bridges as we can. So, all in all, in summary, we want to reduce the number of cars on roads. We want to open up BRT corridor to ensure that more people can use BRTs. We want to maximize our water transportation, and want to use rail services. So, we want to deliver 4 lines in 4 years. So we want to make sure we have the blue line now. We need to take it from Okumaiko to Badagry. Currently it has stopped at Okumaiko, right? And we need to do that to Badagry because we want to increase that tourism potential and also open up Badagry so that, they don't constantly feel that they're not part of Lagos. That entire Badagry division completely feels left out of this entire thing. And then you want a situation where the red line, most of the line has already been done by the federal government. So they've built their train stations and all that, which is good. I mean, we want to maximize, if we're doing right-of-way sharing, it's fine. So that's good, red line. But we also want to ensure that, that redeem to Marina line is also coming into play. You also have the Alimosho to Marina line coming into play. So 3 more lines that we're going to add in 4 years' time.
All right.
The total amount of line we need is 160 kilometers. Currently, they've only done 16 kilometers. So that's 10% in 23 years, which is appalling and a complete failure.
Okay. You've talked about all these wonderful plans in taking Lagos to the next level. This will cost trillions of naira. Can you tell us how you plan to raise funds for all these, especially with the current economic downturn locally and globally?
Okay, so the first step will be to block all leakages. The NURTW currently makes about 120 billion every year. That's not accounted for. That nobody knows where this money is going to. You have a situation where Alpha Beta are generating billions, 15% of our IGR every month. that's just going to pockets of one man. You have a situation where government is appropriating lands that belong to indigents and families, and they've accumulated huge acres, hectares of land, and there is no value that's being added to the state for this. Right? So there must be investigation to all of this because they are locking down value in a way that does not bring in any value to the state. So all these things need to be looked at. And then also, we need to create incentives for people to pay taxes. There's nobody in Lagos State that can tell you this is a direct incentive to me paying tax. You look at what Governor Soludo did in Anambra now, where if you are a bus driver, you pay your taxes, you have access to healthcare insurance. Now, these are the kind of things that nobody will tell you to go and pay your tax. But this is a benefit, right? If, for instance, a part of the Commonwealth of Lagos plan that's in my vision document, whether you're paying tax in the formal sector or informal sector, it's recorded, and you then have access to be on the housing ladder. So, as part of our housing system, we have a deficit of about 3 million homes. We want to be doing at least 10,000 homes, 10,000 units a year. Now, this is for low-income earners and people that need it. But how you get involved in it is through a lottery system that's open, transparent. Let's say everybody is paying 100,000 to get into that lottery, right? You can actually generate significant amount of money, up to 60% of the cost of those units by doing that. As long as it's a transparent, credible system by which people get these buildings, you see that people are engaged in it. That's one way of generating money. Another thing is we're partnering with the private sector as well for a lot of these projects. I've sat down with infrastructure developers that will tell you that, listen, we have come to Lagos State to say that we want to do these 4 rail lines at the same time simultaneously. And they've rebuffed us because they want equity in our company, or they want to be the ones in charge of ticketing, right? So you have a situation where, because of state capture, the development of Lagos has been highly stifled because my brother must be the person running this thing that you want to do, or my sister must be the person collecting this money from the markets, right? So it stifles so much development, and that's what we're getting rid of. So Lagos State has the capacity to pay for all of these things and to partner with private sector, because Lagos State in itself, because of its population, right, it's extremely feasible to actually engage in a lot of these projects, right? And especially when we are working at the actual rate, because Lagos State currently is doing ×4 the benchmark for any project. So once we bring transparency and accountability into this, they will be 4 times more efficient than what Lagos State currently is.
Okay, I want to open up my line so people can get to ask you questions. I'm going to bring you guys live. Ask your question within 1 minute so other people can have the opportunity to ask questions. So if you're interested in asking questions, kindly indicate by raising your hand, and also kindly indicate by sending me a request. Okay? So if you're interested, raise your hand. Okay, quite a few people have sent requests. Keep your questions and your comments polite, or I will remove you. Are you interested in asking questions? Oh my goodness. Nigeria has happened to us. That was quick.
Well, it came right back. Like a resourceful citizen that you are. With the rate of power, with the rate everything.
All right. I have a debate show that I run every Tuesday. It's called Clash of the Supporters, where APC, PDP, and Labour Party, which are the 3 dominant parties in my opinion, have the opportunity to go against each other. And here's one of the representatives of the Labour Party. So this is your guy. I'm sure the representatives of the other parties too are going to come. So it's always good to start with your own people. His name is Brume. He supported my page and me for a long time in every way or form, and he is a very big Peter Obi Labour Party supporter. So over to you, Brume. What are your questions?
Yeah, good afternoon, Daddy Freeze. Good afternoon, GBADEBO. I hope I pronounced your name correctly.
Yeah, you did. Good evening.
Good evening, yeah. So my question, Daddy Freeze has asked you so many questions, but my question is around town planning.
Okay.
I know normally cities develop, following certain patterns, right? Either circular or block patterns, right? If you go to, I'll call it the edge of Lagos, like after Ajah, you have these communities selling land to developers, and the developers are basically building estates, right? My worry about all of this is drainage. As the estates begin to develop indiscriminately, you're going to have issues with flooding. And I think we see that in Lekki already. You also have the Eco Atlantic city that has built this big levee to protect Eco Atlantic. But that has displaced some of the ocean water sideways. And I'm sure it's headed to those places like, Lekki and all of that, right? So do you have any plan to formalize town planning in Lagos? And talking about that, do you have any plans? For example, I know the top of Lagos is already developed, right? Have you ever thought about like a subway tunneling below Lagos to expand the mass transit network? So my questions are two. How will you solve the drainage problem caused by indiscriminate development? That's one. And number two, how will you solve mass transit without having to spend so much money to demolish the surface, right? And then a third one, right? The process of getting certified land documents in Lagos. So I have a few properties in Lagos, and it was a nightmare getting my stuff stamped to get the governor's consent. Because every day bring 600K, every day bring 700K, every day bring 800K. I know Governor Obaseki has made it easy in Benin. It's quite simple. So I don't know if you're looking into stuff like that already. Thank you very much.
Before you go, what's your discipline?
So I studied civil engineering. I worked 12 years in oil and gas, and now I'm in IT. I've been around.
I asked because you literally answered your questions.
Oh, I did.
You literally answered your questions, and it's good. I like the way you frame your framework. First of all, you're exactly right. There's an indiscriminate level of land thinning that's going on in Lagos State, and it's detrimental. Lagos State, obviously, is below sea level, and that's why we have a lot of issues with flooding. So our wetlands across Lagos State are natural gutters, they are natural reservoirs for water. Unfortunately, it's been indiscriminately sandfilled by developers, and there is no wetland protection plan. So that's part of my vision for Lagos State. We're mapping out the proper wetland protection plan that is sacrosanct. So there are certain places where you cannot develop on. You can create parks there. You can create tourist attractions there. But you are not going to sandfill it and displace the water, right? So, and unfortunately, I say Lagos State is run for profit, not the people. Because when you look at Eco Atlantic, you see all that sandfilling that happened, all that water was displaced to Ikorodu, and then other places that you've also mentioned. And that's why they have the kind of flooding that they do. You also look at places like Isheri, right? You see that whole place where channels is built and everything is all sandfilled. So they didn't do proper dredging of the Ugu River. They didn't do any proper embankment. So by 3-4 weeks ago, people were walking around there in rain boots, and they already started moving out of their houses, right? And this is happening all over Lagos. So we are one. We have a wetland protection plan that's mapped out. We also have a mapping out of our primary, secondary, and tertiary drainage systems in Lagos State, where some will be mechanized and some will also be data-driven. So we are not reacting to water, we are anticipating the water, and we also have the mechanisms to work efficiently. So people think that just having a pump, pushing is efficient. No. Based on the data that you have, you can know the efficiency that your pump should be pushing at and the power that you should be consuming at that time. Right? So then you're saving costs. and your system is more efficient. So that's what that's the vision for Lagos State. Obviously, the pedestrian things like covering the gutters, tying it into proper waste management, so we are recycling and upcycling, not just sand filling and land filling, right, which is the waste of waste. So all these systems come together. The other question, I think I've done the first one justice. The other question, which is quite interesting about tunneling, it's not feasible in Lagos. It's not feasible because one, we're very low in terms of the sea level. Right, and you know most parts of Lagos, you just go small, water is already coming out. And except you want to create a Eurostar kind of system, and the Eurostar system is extremely expensive. Right? So our solution, or the best solution, is trams, you know, trying to share right of way with roads as much as you can, expanding road networks so that you can also have your rail line, light rail going also across that as well. And then also water transportation. So water transportation really, because I mean, we have a lot of water, right? So you're not necessarily going to have traffic on the water. So once you have a ferry that's moving, the main challenge for that would be the economics of it. Because we want to ensure that the transportation is, I don't want to use the word cheap, but it's affordable, right? It's affordable because the opportunity cost of traffic is the inefficiency of your whole system, and you're not necessarily enabling business to thrive. And when businesses thrive, they are able to pay more taxes, right? So water transportation, try and create a route and a system that allows for a ferry to be able to be financially feasible. Because you know most people are moving in the morning and they're coming back in the evening. What are you going to do during the day? What would you be moving goods during the day? How are you going to link, for instance, your ferry to port activities? So things like that are the challenges that we're going to be taking on. But yes, I agree that we need a wetland protection plan because we need to get water out of the city as fast as possible. There are parts of Lagos Island that are flooded 40% of the year, right? Because water is displaced. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I must say, Lagos will be lucky to have you as their governor. I wish you good luck in the next election.
Papa, Mama, Peking.
Yes, so
Papa, Mama, and Peking. Thank you, Brume. All right, let me bring some more questions.
I'm waiting for it to you.
You spoke too soon. They are here.
Fantastic. Let's go.
This is
the that just came is let me not call him something, right? But
this is the
one quick. It's related to what Daddy Freeze was talking about security, right?
Yeah.
We watched a video on Instagram a few days ago. The guy said he was kidnapped in public transportation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, is there any plan by your government, when you're elected, to formalize public transportation in such a way that if I enter a taxi, for example, it has a number that I can refer to in the future, right? Because I lived in Abu Dhabi for 4 years, and if I left my phone in a taxi, right, I call the taxi company and I say, hey, I was picked up from in front of X hotel, for example, at 7 p.m. They know who picked me up, and they can tell me if the person returned my phone to them, right? So is there a plan to take over the public transportation system or register them somehow so that when a Lagosian sees a taxi, it has a number or some sort of seal from the Lagos state government that assures him that, he's safe entering that taxi, because I don't think that exists today.
Yes, I completely agree. And these are things that the government will work together with stakeholders in that sector to deliver. Also, mainly on the public buses, there must be a camera there that's recording and keeping track of the activities that are going on there. Not just on the bus, but on the bus stops as well, and areas that are in its primary environment. I also feel that this also should go down to local governments as well, and that's why I keep talking about autonomy at local government level, where, and it's not just taxis, it's also bikes, right? I don't believe in just this banning of things outrightly. I think that's an easy way of thinking. I think you can look at things and see, for instance, the last mile for people to get home from the immediate bus stop, right? Some people cannot get there without Okadas. How do you register those Okadas to make sure that they're only able to fly in that ward, right? And they are registered with the local government, right? So if anything goes wrong, the local government can monitor and track them, right? And ensure that the process of the registration is so robust but also acceptable that these people would feel the need to, uphold the laws and the regulations that got them that permit, right? So those are things we'll be looking at, and we really need visionary local government chairmen, and that's what we'll be doing.
All right, thank you so much, Brume. As soon as I brought him on, the viewership increased by 50 people. This gentleman is the head of Team Ashiwaju on Clash of the Supporters, which is my Tuesday show at midnight.
Okay.
So he's your opposition. And quite a few people are back and forth in already. It looks like it's going to get quite interesting. So, DJ Bongoli, we have the gubernatorial candidate for the Labour Party, Mr. GBADEBO, Vivour, if I got that correctly. So, what are your questions?
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Good evening, good morning, good night. My name is Ayodeji Bakare, aka DJ Bongoli. I am a chemical engineer by practice, and I'm also a DJ on the side. I'm a card-carrying member of the APC, and you wished for APC and you got APC. So, firstly, this might not be I might not be asking questions. I'm going to make it interesting, because there are lots of things that you said that I do not agree with. Like everything you have said today, I don't agree with it 1%, unfortunately. Now, firstly, when you started talking, you talked about the Agbero menace and all that stuff. And then we're talking about security and traffic and all of that. Now, these same Agberos that were vilifying in quotes, and people here are vilifying, the head of the Agbero brought about the barcode system, that buses and cabs will have barcodes, so people on their phones can also scan. Fine, yes, we know that not everyone have access to smartphones that will have barcodes and all that, but an idea came from a so-called Agbero in quotes. So, the Agberos also are human beings like you and I. So, I just feel this elitist kind of talk, and I see that in the comment section. Now, secondly, when Daddy Freeze asked you a question about transportation and all of that, I was like, oh yes, let me hear what he has to say. How I wish you started by talking about the population growth of Lagos State, because that will let me know that yes, there's so much you can do to the inner roads. There's so much you can do to state roads and all. And then expanding on marine transportation, because Lagos State already has that already. There's marine transportation going on in Lagos State. We have actual agencies in Lagos State. We have an agency that is for that in Lagos State. When I talk about the rail system, Lagos State has 6 rail systems that are ongoing. 2 are going to be built, completed very soon. The red rail and the blue rail. And then we have purple rail, we have green rail, we have orange rail, and we have yellow rail. So when we are talking about transportation and all that, Lagos State is doing that. You said they are going to do 4 rails in 4 years. We are talking about transportation, we're talking about traffic, we're talking about security. What would that do to our traffic? Where are you going to build that 4 rail lines in 4 years that will not cause traffic? Now, you also talked about the Chinese exchange system, $170 million. Lagos State is $1.5 million. Maybe you're not aware, but Lagos State has been compensating people that has the right of way, the homes and all of that stuff. Just the red rail alone, over 5,000 people had to be compensated. Be it landowners, be it tenants, and be it landlords. You talked about, you want buses and all of that to go into pass through the BRT system and all of that. In the London that you're talking about, in the America that you're talking about, so buses should just be going through the bus lines. Because you talked about that also. You talked about dredging. Isn't the Lekki Free Trade Zone a success story? Because now the Lekki Free Trade Zone is going to bring in at least $200 billion in revenue. And then it's going to create over 171,000 jobs. And that is an after effect of the dredging and all of the sand filling and all of that. So when you say all of these things, I'm like, Lagos State is already doing this already. Lagos State is spending at least 10% on education already. The budget was 1.17 trillion naira in 2022, and it's 170 billion on education alone. So you have all of these beautiful ideas and all of that. Where will you find the money? Where is the funding for the money? Because Lagos State budget, Lagos is always having a budget deficit of about 15 to 20%. So where will we see the money? That is my question. I just put those comments and then I just threw that question. Where will we get the funding? Because they are all very beautiful ideas.
No. Well, I'm sorry. You can't just say comments. I have to address everything that you said.
No problem. I'm here for you, sir.
Okay.
Let's go.
So when we talk about agri-menace, I sat down with the chairman of the bus unions, right? And there's nothing elitist about the people, chairman of bus unions. They are completely distraught. They are in court. In fact, they wanted to protest, but they were so scared for their lives about what will happen to them, intimidation and all whatnot. The main thing that came out from their thing is that monkey they walk, baboon they chop. I'm waking up early, in charge of maintaining my bus, moving around, and people are just collecting. The fact of the matter is this: you have a situation where there was a time in Lagos where none of these things existed. You have a situation where you have so many young men wasting their lives away, standing on street corners, enabled by the state, and there was no bigger epitome of this than during NSAS when BRT buses, busloads of people came in front of the state building in Alausa, carrying young men with machetes, trying to attack young innocent protesters. That was literally the epitome of all of that, right? So when you talk about the barcode system, people are bringing ideas to anybody that has access to the I don't even know what to call him. Whoever has been in charge of the state capture of Lagos State to push projects, to push proposals. So this is not a question of being elite or elitist, right? This is a question of young people are wasting their lives, people that are going up and down their business every day, the multiple taxations that even just the lady that's carrying a tray on her head selling granules is having to pay to these young people. We saw what happened at Alaba, where a whole bunch of them came into the market and invaded the market and led to the death of the vice chairman of the task force in Alaba. So many things, right? And you have so many young people just wasting their lives. And there must be another way. And it's not, I'm not talking a situation where put these people aside or put them apart. No, we will work with them to create engagements that will improve their employability skills, create incentives for companies to hire them, whether it is when you hire these people for the next 1 year, 2 years, you're not going to pay any tax for the salaries that you're paying these people, to ensure that these people can be absorbed and be productive. Right, so that's the first thing on this agro thing. It has nothing to do about elitism, and the people that are waking up to enter buses in the morning, they are complaining about the same thing. Talking about population growth, I think that's very rich coming from the APC, because they take pride that you generate this idea from people. Generate this idea from people. Without the population of Lagos State, you will not have this idea that you boast about. You talk about development based on idea. We've raised so much money. The idea used to be so many million now, but it's people you are generating from, right? So you cannot just pick and choose, right? Enable these people, ensure that they are right? So that even the income that it can generate increases, as opposed to just a shakedown of multiple taxations. The woman in Mr. Leko is there complaining about multiple taxations. They're charging her for so many stealth taxes that they have to do, or even on their shops are locked, or if they don't come and work to campaign for somebody, their shops will be locked. I'm sure you claim that you do not see that in the news, but that is there. Lagos State is going to be one of the arms of the new megapolis, which will be the largest population centers in the world the next 40, 50 years. That goes all the way to Abidjan. You can't change that, right? It is what is going to happen. Now, the point is that we need to assist with more innovators and link to all of these things so we can actually benefit from this population that we have. You know, I'm eyes on it. In terms of mine transportation, you see, Lagos State was called Center of Excellence for nothing. You know, Darucha in his time was pumping water from Iju to Lagos Island. This was the level Lagos was operating at. You didn't just wake up and say Lagos is Center of Excellence. So when we're talking about water transportation, what I see is, you know, you have a little boat moving up and down, we have water transportation. Right? We should have ferries that are moving around. We should have aqua buses that are moving around. We should have innovation. So when you come to Lagos State, you are seeing excellence, not just tokenism, not just, you know, you're getting by with mediocrity. People are moving around. Yes, in this they are small. Water transportation has not become the norm because too much lip service is being paid to it. It's not being done properly. You don't have jetties that have become part interwoven with the culture, with the society in that community. Right? You have people that are going, boats can capsize. Safety is a major issue that if you have a proper ferry up and down the place. Right, so our waters are not properly dredged. Information and data is not available for people to even invest in the system, to invest in that industry. Right, so you just make do with this. So it can be so much more. It can be so much more. You talk about blue line, red rail. Well, first of all, the red line infrastructure, the rail itself was done by the Met, so not done by Lagos State. Yes, they have some connecting rails that they've done to it, but it was not done by Lagos State. So when you're talking about right of way and all of that, it cannot account for $900 million. No matter how you want to spin it or weave it, or some of the stories and excuses that they made, benchmark since the time of Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Lagos State has been operating at 4 times the World Bank benchmark for any infrastructure that they are doing in Lagos State. So this price, and there's so many scams running, whether it's the dredging, whether it's the roads they are doing. And then the blue line, 16 kilometers in 23 years. Okay, great. So I guess when I'm 90, I might have the remaining rails going, right? These are things that even the Lagos-Ibadan rail, how long did it take? 160 kilometers, right? So if the state cannot get their act together and put this thing in place, then they should let someone else do it, right? Let's show them how it can be done. Blue rail that was supposed to get all the way to Okokomaiko, it has been reduced. It was supposed to 4.5, now 16 kilometers, something that should be going all the way to Badagry. And if the state is saying they don't want to partner with the private sector and they cannot fund it, then the question is why? Because as a governor, my entire purpose is to enable the quality of life of my people. It's not about the profit I'm going to make from this thing. I'm not in business, in the job to enable, right? So I will partner with the private sector to ensure that my people have an enabling environment and can move around Lagos in an affordable way. And that's my major concern, affordability, right? So blue line, yes, we've already, like I said, the 160 kilometers of rail that would be necessary for Lagos to work is not my idea, right? It's the plan of Lagos State, right? I'm not going to come now and tell you that I'm going to rework the design because like someone actually mentioned earlier, design urban planning works in a cycle, and everything is coming down to marina. So, you know, there's a lot of, for instance, the green marina line, there's a lot of road sharing that is being done, right? There's a lot of thought that has gone to it. My own thing is the efficiency delivery, right? Ensuring that we can partner with infrastructure developers. Right? This Lagos State is feasible to allow for these projects to happen. And 23 years should not be taken to build a real light, in my opinion. Also, you spoke about the red buses in London. Well, London is not suffering for buses. The blue, all these BRT buses and all of that, they barely take. Last I checked, about 9 to 10% of the community. Each bus moves about 40 people. When you think about 5 to 6 million people moving around the Lagos State every day, that's minuscule. So, for the fact that we have a deficit in terms of need, we should open it up transparently. It doesn't have to be a monopoly that's owned by somebody in the APC government, right? Same thing with Loma and the PSPs. It's so politicized. If I am a private person and I can afford to get a truck, I should have a transparent way where I can just go and register that truck, right? And it can operate. There are still parts of Lagos that are very underserved. They've never seen a PSP truck come. Even Bagada. There are parts of Bagada that does not have PSP coverage, right? So we need as many trucks as possible, as many buses as possible. And that's why I'm saying that I'm advocating for the opening of these routes in a transparent and open way, set criteria for them, and we allow them to also use BRT, except we're at a position where we have enough buses to move Lagosians across Lagos. But we are not there. I know we are not there. Dredging, free trade zone, Dangote refinery, that entire development, it's like saying that Lagos State is excellent because we have the Lekki Link Bridge, we have the Ikoyi, You still have parts of Ojo, riverine areas in Apapa that don't feel that they're part of Lagos. They've never had they don't have any primary healthcare centers. There's so much that is lacking, right? So,
I want to round this off. Hold on, GRV. I want to round this off so I can bring somebody else. But I must appreciate how you're answering the questions. You obviously did not just stumble upon this and grab an actress as a running mate kind of thing. We can see that, and I'm sure APC Bongoli will agree that this gentleman is a bit sound. Bongo.
Well, I have a bunch of.
We will not agree. There's nothing I'm going to tell him.
I have a lot of reporters to what he has said. I still agree 0% to all the things that he has said because he has not answered one fundamental question. And the Labour Party ideology is the government running the key sectors of the economy. But I see him keep mentioning private investment. We're going to get private investors. Now, secondly, he talked about him sitting and meeting up with the art bureaus, for example. And I know he's talking about NURTW because there was an issue recently.
No, I did not say that. I said the Association of Bus Owners, the ones that went on strike.
Okay. Apologies for that. But I just want people to realize something, that NURTW, NARTO, RTEAN, they are backed by law. Secondly, you talked about taxes. Also, taxing the people. Guys, do you know that from 1960 to 2015, only 13 million Nigerians were paying taxes? Today, in the last 7 years, that number is 35 million people now in Nigeria are paying taxes now. So we are improving in the tax aspect. We are saying that we are going to expand the tax bracket. That is what we are doing. We are not trying to overtax people. Expansion of the tax bracket. Now, you talked about database and all of that. Just 3 months ago, Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu launched a data. They went to visit a database system. Himself, Muri Okunola, I think he was in Ikeja. So Lagos State is already doing that already. You talked about rail lines taking 23 years. When Tinubu brought the grand plan for that rail lines and all of that, those different rail lines that are coming up, did your former party, did the leader of your former party give him the approval to move forward with those projects? Was it when Fashola came in that he started getting some approvals for it? Because I know you're from the PDP and you moved to Labour Party.
Why stop the metro line from Jakode?
All right. Sorry, before you answer this question, Bongoli, I need to take you out so I can bring somebody else in so we can ask the final question. Thank you so much, DJ Bongoli.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you, sir. Thank you very much for your time, sir. Nice meeting you, sir. All the best in the elections. I wish you the very best, sir. Eko Onibaje.
Thank you.
Hey. All right. So APC has gone. I'm trying to bring in one more question from the people. Where's Priya? She came in briefly. Priya is the head of Labour Party, or should I say Team OB. And I'm sure her question would also matter, and I'll use her as the very last question. How did that go, though? GRV.
It was good engagement. You always justify the thing, but for me, Lagos State in 1966 was ranked 56 out of the best 70 cities in the world. In the last 10 years, it's been ranked the bottom 2 worst place to live in the world. So no matter how many people want to make excuses and everything, the numbers don't lie. You know? I just don't like the idea of occupying the job.
All right. With PDP, where are you? We've had an APC question. We've had a Labour Party question. I would like a PDP question. Or what's that Showore's party called again? What's Showore's party called? Nobody seems to have the answer. All right. On this bombshell, can you answer his last question and then we round off?
Okay, so the thing you talked about education, and I said 2 million children are out of school. In terms of funding, I spoke about that earlier. One, we're blocking all the loopholes. We're going to open our accounts, transparent and accountably, line by line items, so that accountability takes on a life of its own. And we're going to benchmark all our projects to World Bank benchmarks. Like I said, Lagos State, since Bola Medicine has been doing projects at 4 times the price of the World Bank benchmark. We're going to be meeting that benchmark and even trying to get better deals, right? And in ensuring that the Lagos State is accountable, funds that are coming into the state are not being used willy-nilly. The ramp that connects Ozumba to Falomo is done at 4 times the price as should be done. Not even just the World Bank benchmark in Ethiopia and even in Ghana, right? So we need a situation where the monies that we have are being used efficiently and we are partnering with the private sector, right? And a lot of these funds that they are declaring are still very, very under-declared. So it's only until after these 23 years someone gets into that position and actually x-rays. If you remember when Ambode first came in, they showed you how they were doing, I think, boreholes for 70 million naira and websites for all sorts of money. So there needs to be a audit, right? So that people can actually truly know what has been going on in Lagos State for the last 20 years.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, GBADEBO Rhodes Vivour, the gubernatorial candidate for the for the Labour Party in Lagos. So, what are your parting thoughts? Quite a lot of people turned out. They wanted to hear you speak. Many were impressed, including me. And it's not easy to impress me, but I did enjoy the session. And sadly, we didn't have too many. I was trying to be careful so I don't bring all the stubborn people, and then it now gets a little bit too chaotic. But all in all, you did very well, and Lagos deserves a young,
Thank you.
vibrant, well-educated person, and I do hope
Thank you.
for the best for you. So, what are your parting notes?
Well, for me, it is very important that we understand where we are now as a country. Nigeria is on the cliff edge. The two parties pretty much have thrown up people that have amassed a whole amount of wealth from questionable means, a lot of wealth without enterprise, and money has just become the focal point of how our leaders emerge. And that is never good for a country. I feel that it's now time for the people to rise. It's time for us to have servant leaders. It's time for politicians that actually can be accountable to you, because it's only you that put them there. They cannot get in there because they have money, or they cannot get in there because they control security architecture or have the ad bureaus. They get in there because the people put them in there. And until our politicians start to think and work with that mindset, Nigeria is not going to move forward. We are falling very low. I know that in 2015, people thought that things were bad in Nigeria, but we are that pot that we were in, the bottom of that pot has fallen out. We are literally in the fire now. And we need somebody that's going to manage our economy, that has capacity, that has the energy, has the youthful vibrancy and the will, empathy, and love. You see, that's something that has been lost in our leadership. You look at people like Awolowo or Herbert Macaulay, a lot of their politics was the politics of love, or the politics of ensuring that their people did well. And that's why till today we are still singing their names and talking about them so many years after they've gone, because nobody has really stepped into those shoes. So I know that Nigerians have normalized being oppressed. I tell people that if I go somewhere as a politician, I'll tell my fellow Nigerians to say that I'm not serious. I'm not a serious politician. They are used to that whole, and it came from the military. But we need to unlearn that, and we need to understand that we, the people, you, the people, are the bosses. You're hiring these people, and they must be accountable to you. Let's stop having rulers over us. Let's have servant leaders. And to do this, you need to get your voters card.